What is that? Are you recording?
I'm recording.
Cool. This is a non-finished Christmas story to my family about what it's like to spend the weeks before Christmas in Xilitla. And it's unfinished. And then arrive in the United States, where we all know that Christmas actually centers around the birth of Frosty the Snowman. I've been thinking that it was a nice relief to be spared all the Christmas hoopla of the States. They had already started in when I was north for Thanksgiving. A constant bombardment of songs about Frosty, Rudolph, etc., and that endless push to buy stuff to be happy. I caught some great TV file footage from last year of people being trampled at Walmarts on Black Friday, which seems to be taking on the status of the holiday itself, albeit a strange one. Down here there had been almost nothing in that vein. We had our share of religious processions, though mostly concerned with the Virgin of Guadalupe. Very commonly they are led by a float of sorts, decorated with a little girl dressed as the Holy Virgin. Frequently the float is based on a very beat-up old pickup. One of the processions, which held me up for close to an hour, was almost exclusively teenagers, a full kilometer or so of them walking double file up mountain from the surrounding countryside to the 460-year-old church in El Centro. Folks in the countryside, in many in town, are pretty poor and are about as likely to receive a giant flat-screen TV, video games, etc., as it is probable that three guys on camels will come riding in bearing gold, frankincense, and myrrh. I found out something interesting about myrrh while looking up how to spell it. Quote, myrrh oil is non-irritant and non-sensitizing, but could be toxic in high dosage and should not be used in pregnancy, as it can act as a uterine stimulant. A strange gift to show up with at a virgin birth, or maybe not. I guess you had to be there. This week we're seeing more of Santa here. Last night I attended a little party which featured a Santa Piñata, which are all the rage this week. I enjoyed, actually, delighted, seeing the little children beating the crap out of old Saint Nick with sticks and clubs to get their treats.
Oh, shit.
This is all the truth. Perhaps we could learn a lesson. The bad kids all hung by the chimney with care, in hopes that St. Nicholas soon would be there. This has led me to scrutinize some of our favorite Christmas carols. He sees when you are sleeping. He knows when you're awake. He knows if you've been bad or good, so be good for goodness sake. As a secular humanist, I'm all for being good for goodness sake. Goodness sake. Without threats. I think that's a major factor, in fact, in secular humanism. I say secular humanism, although I actually consider myself a secular animist, which could obviously at this time of year leads to reindeer, and most particularly Rudolph, obviously. quote, all of the other reindeer used to laugh and call him names. They never let poor Rudolph play in any reindeer games, and so forth. We have a foggy night, the North Pole, which has very thin ice these days. Rudolph's physical deformity / disease, a red nose, frequently associated with alcoholism, and Santa, some kind of spook from perhaps homeland insecurity. Well, he sees when you're sleeping, knows when you're awake. Enough about Santa and company, back to reindeer and that infamous night. All of the other reindeer laughed and shouted out with glee. Rudolph the red-nosed reindeer, you'll go down in history.
History.
We have the question of why Rudolph, our hero, has such flaky friends. As a half-assed writer, I always know when I write a word I've never used. Glee is one of them. On top of that, I don't believe I've ever read a word or heard the word in everyday conversation. Kids sure look gleeful tonight. Or its derivation, gleeful, except in the concept of Christmas. I doubt if any great American authors like Steinbeck, Hemingway, or even Mark Twain used it. Perhaps Dickens, although his books are not noted for good times, much less glee. Okay, I'll finish this in my own words. I have another version of it. But I'm wondering how these flaky reindeer friends of Rudolph all of a sudden go from calling him names, not letting him play in reindeer games, even though they only have to work one night a year. Say, you'll go down in history. And, well, frankly, going down, and this is my own words here, it's not being written, this is the actual finished version. But, Rudolph has these flaky friends who, in 1 minute, won't let him play in reindeer games and call him names. And the next thing you know, it's like he's going to go down in history. Well, what does exactly going down in history mean? Most of the history I've been taught in life is bullshit. The Alamo, for example.
Right.
No, I'm really winging it. But at the Alamo, Santana executed and they killed a lot of people. And if you go there, you'll find a plaque with a lot of the names of the Texans, Americans who came down there, like Davy Crockett and Jim Bowie and Travis and everything, whose sole interest in rebelling from Mexico and becoming independent was so that they could bring in slavery, which is at that time illegal in Mexico. And most of the fighters at the Alamo were Mexicans who were with the Texans. Most people don't know that, but also wanted to secede from Mexico.
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
Well, they didn't.
That somebody wrote his own story, called it his story.
Yeah. And when you go to the Alamo, and I was telling this to some guy from Minnesota who was down here for Christmas, and had just been to the Alamo, and I and a barmaid were trying to explain the actual history, and he had no idea that Davy Crockett and Travis, I believe she said, she was very helpful. Well, she had large breasts, which helped a lot. And she pointed out that I couldn't remember whether it was Jim Bowie or Travis. And she said, no, Travis was actually had converted to Catholicism, but was a slave trader. And the entire reason for the rebellion at the Alamo was to bring slavery into what we now call Texas, which was part of Mexico. And I was really glad to see that young kids were getting a good education these days. And the whole thing is just a scam. And when you go to the Alamo, they have these guys' names on the wall there, and they're all white people who came in trying to get Jim Bowie, Travis, Crockett, all of them. Their whole objective was to bring slavery into Mexico, which was illegal. Okay, and but there were a bunch of Mexicans who were fighting with them, and none of their names are on the wall of the Alamo, which brings me back to Rudolph, who, we heard would go down in history. And being we were fairly drunk, I and this guy from Minnesota who actually believed us, and the barmaid with huge breasts who was agreeing with me, that what we ought to do is drive to San Antonio at that point, which was way too late, like closing time, and put Rudolph at the carbon, below the names of Travis and Crockett and everybody at the Alamo,
He'll go down in his story.
because history is bullshit.